think about maybe going back to Texas for a while, but I heard it like that, but I like it there. Buy a house back on the other
What's warmer, Texas or you think it's hotter there than here?
Oh, it is hotter in Texas. It's getting to be colder in Texas too.
The weather is extreme.
So you can be doing the sermon also, right? I'm assuming you're filling in today for, Thank you.
Well, I'm watching it. Well, it's a bad, so what is it?
Right thing to do.
And I took the phone back and it had a whack. And opened up all but I didn't completely break it. It broke the hinge on it. I can't excuse it. I took it back to see Mom. And the phone could be repaired. But I have a habit of just watching
busting out the door. Look out. We're going to school.
Old school. Old school.
We go to school today.
They're good. She's going to try to get it back. So, but
Everybody knows.
mediums there are, I think
In charge school.
pick up. All right. You know what I do?
Good morning.
Morning.
Good to see everyone here this morning.
So,
I'm going to do a quick mic check. Can you hear me? Am I too loud?
no.
If I yell? Okay, great.
Raise your voice real quick. We'll let you know.
Yeah. Real good to see you here this morning. We are going to take our study this morning out of the book of Ecclesiastes, and we're going to be in chapter 2. The reason that we are not jumping into Nahum and Habakkuk this morning is our brother Kenny is feeling very poorly and is unable to be with us this morning. So today, throughout the services, you'll see a few fill-ins, and I'm going to ask a couple of things of you this morning as we get started. Number one, this is kind of a spontaneous study, so I'm going to ask you to just jump right in. Don't hold back. Let's have some good conversation about a text that we're actually all pretty familiar with. If you've been studying for any length of time at all, we're pretty familiar with Ecclesiastes and its themes, and I really want to talk about life application as we go through that study today. The second thing I'd like you to do is that whenever I start looking for my glasses this morning, remind me that they're in my pocket.
Right.
As we get started, I've asked Warren if he would lead us in a word prayer.
Dear God, we thank you for this day. It's a day that, first of all, you allow us all to rise and to know your power, to bask in the things you give us, to enjoy the things you give us, especially the gift of the church, the gift of fellowship. Thank you for this opportunity to study more of your word, to keep growing in our understanding of it. We need to build up our library, our mental and spiritual library, so we can share that with others, and that's what you want us to do. That's what this study is for, to help us and to help us help others. Be with life and help us all participate and continue growing in knowledge today. In your son's name we pray.
Amen. Thank you very much. We are off to a great start. I've got other markers here, Bob. Let me see if any of them work before we... There we go. So Ecclesiastes chapter 2 is where we're going to pull our conversation. But before we jump into that, let's just go through a little bit of quick trivia. Who wrote the Book of Solomon? No? No?
You just gave it away.
Who wrote the Book of Ecclesiastes?
Solomon.
Was it Peter?
No.
It was Solomon, yes. All right. We are off to a rough start. And when was Solomon king of Israel? Roughly. The year.
Oh.
What's that?
1,000 or 980?
Yeah, around there, around there.
Sure.
Solomon reigned for about 40 years, from 970 to 930, 931, in that area. So the book of Ecclesiastes itself has a number of different themes that we're generally pretty familiar with. What are some of those themes from your recollection?
Life is empty without God.
Life empty without God. Good. What else? There's a hand back here.
The word vanity is used.
Vanity.
Talking about this life.
In description of this. Okay, go ahead.
He touches upon the heart.
Touches upon the heart, most definitely. What are some of the other themes that we see in the scriptures?
I think there's talk about the difference between the righteous person and the fool.
Yes?
Yes.
Foolish. And I'm running dry on this one as well. Another one of the themes that we see predominantly go ahead, Mr. Vale.
The cyclic nature of life.
Yes.
Cyclic nature.
Yes.
Fearing God and keeping His commandments.
Over here again.
Fearing God,
Fearing God.
keeping His commandments.
Your futility of pleasures and possessions.
Okay? So yes, that's couched inside of one of the conversations that we're actually going to have today.
Okay, sorry.
And no, you're right on point. And it really comes down to a lot of what has already been talked about, but meaning of life. Finding something of true, lasting value in life. Any others? I mean, there's a lot of different thoughts and things that we can pull from the book of Ecclesiastes. There is one that's fairly significant.
Everything has its time.
Everything has its time. Warren?
Despite his Solomon's reign, a very wise person, there was a lot of wickedness, which I think caused him to go into reflection. And, right? Of course, God helped him, inspired him.
Yeah, absolutely.
That caused him, right?
So as we're considering this 40 years, I think it's pretty safe for us to assume that Solomon wrote it a lot closer to this end of the spectrum after having served and lived as king for quite some time. Okay, so there's a lot there. There's a lot there. We're not going to cover all of this today in detail because you probably want to go to lunch at some point. But I would like to read through this. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, he wrote it then, but the lessons and everything is timeless. You could say that could be written today true. Everything be as true.
Yeah. That's pretty well, everybody can pretty much nod their head on that. There's not one of these concepts that has an expiration date on it at all, which, again, the wisdom and power of our Lord, not just that he had that wisdom, but the way he delivered it to us so that we could hold that in our hearts and know that what was said here still applies to me today. What I'd like to do is, as we get started this morning, is read through this entire chapter together, and then we'll start working through the text in groups of verses. So could I have a few volunteers to read? I need someone to take the first 11 verses. Billy? Okay, and then 12 through 17. Don? Thank you for that. And then 18 through 26. Keith? Okay. So I'm going to ask it, as we read through this, again, I know this is a rather impromptu study together, but I'm going to ask you to please remember those study tools that we use when we're reading through things. Look for words that repeat. Look for ideas that connect. Look for compare and contrast. Look for all those little things that you do whenever you're studying at home. Apply that as we're reading through here this morning. Okay, Billy, go ahead.
I said in my heart, come now. I will test you with mirth, therefore enjoy pleasure. But surely this is also was vanity. I said of laughter, madness, and of mirth. What does it accomplish? I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine while guiding my heart with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the sons of men to do under heaven in all the days of their lives. I made my works great. I built myself houses and planted myself vineyards. I made myself gardens and orchards, and I planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made myself water pools from which to water the growing the trees of the grove. I acquired male and female servants, and had servants born in my house. Yes, I had greater possessions and herds and flocks than all who were in Jerusalem before me. I also gathered for myself silver and gold, and the special treasures of kings and the providences. I acquired male and female singers, and the delights of the sons of men, and musical instruments of all kinds. So I became great and exalted, more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my reward from all my labor.
Verse 11.
You want me to read verse 11 as well? Okay. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had done, and on the labor in which I had toiled, and indeed all was vanity, and grasping for the wind. There was no profit under the sun.
Thank you. Don?
Then I turned myself to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do who succeeds the king? Only what he has already done. Then I saw that wisdom excels folly, as light excels darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. Yet I I myself perceive that the same event happens to them all. So I said in my heart, as it happens to the fool, it also happens to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, this also is vanity. For there is no more remembrance of the wise than of the fool forever. Since all that now is will be forgotten in the days to come. And how does a wise man die? As the fool. Therefore I hate life, because the work that was done under the sun was distressing for me. For all is vanity and grasping for the wind.
Thank you. Keith?
Then I hated all my labor in which I had toiled under the sun, because I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool? Yet he will rule over all my labor, in which I toiled, and in which I have shown myself wise under the sun. This also is vanity. Therefore I turned my heart, and despaired of all the labor in which I had toiled under the sun. For there is a man whose labor is with wisdom, knowledge, and skill. Yet he must leave his heritage to a man who has not labored for it. This also is vanity, and a great evil. For what has man for all his labor, and for the striving of his heart, with which he has toiled under the sun? For all his days are sorrowful, and his work burdensome. Even in the night his heart takes no rest. This also is vanity. Nothing is better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw was from the hand of God. For who can eat, or who can have enjoyment more than I? For God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to a man who is good in his sight. But to the sinner he gives the work of gathering and collecting, that he may give to him who is good before God. This also is vanity and grasping for the wind.
Thank you. So before we dive into this and pull out all the principles and themes and thoughts and lessons, what is the author telling us he's trying to do? If this was your friend going through this, what would he be trying to communicate to you?
One of the first things that comes to my mind why it is basically saying is that no matter what we do, we have to love God and believe in God, and we're here through God's grace and God's grace alone. Whether we work or don't work, or no matter what we do, we obey God's command, and we're here through His grace.
Good. Good. Is this a message of hope? I mean, does it make you smile? Does it just warm your heart? This feels so good.
I think it's also kind of a thing of kind of sadness too.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like you said, you know, you toil. You do all the work that you've done and that you put into, only to leave it for someone else who hasn't done the work, who hasn't sweat off their brow, who hasn't worked so hard to make that a reality, and you leave it for them. So, and you don't know if they're going to be good or they're going to be bad. They could be good and keep it going, or they could be bad and they can destroy it. You know, so it could be a sad thing too.
Good. Good. Almost called on you, Carla. You flinched. I saw a hand move. I'm pulling that trigger fast, people. So this is a message, and it's hard to know exactly what category we're supposed to put this in. the end message, you've got to determine yourself how you take that, whether that's a message of hope or whether that's a very sober message. Donna, do you have a hand up?
Well, I was thinking it's considered wisdom literature.
Yes.
And there's a relatively famous psychiatrist that was imprisoned in Germany during World War II, and they wouldn't let him treat the other prisoners because that's what he was made to do, and that's what he knew to do. He's a doctor too. He had to dig ditches and things like that. And eventually he decided, my purpose is to do the best thing, the best job I can do every single day. And then he wrote a book, Man's Search for Meaning. And he's saying, you've got to pick a purpose. And if you don't have a purpose, then it really is meaningless and torture and everything. And Ecclesiastes does tell you what your purpose is. Even though it would rather become a millionaire by the time I'm 25.
Yeah.
That would be.
Sure, that feels a lot more fun.
Sure.
Right? Absolutely. Absolutely. Warren?
I think it really hits home because autobiographical. He's talking about his experience.
Yes.
He's talking about what Solomon he himself went through. And with his level of importance and his stature, and him going from the highest to the lowest, from following God to idolatry. In his own words, that's what really makes it powerful. It's not someone else writing about Solomon. It's Solomon opening his heart to the world and providing an example for us to follow.
Yeah.
Or not to follow.
So there's some, I'll get you up. There's some significance. There's definitely a difference when someone tells you about their neighbor's experience with a contractor in their house, or someone telling you about their own experience, good or bad, right? It is great to get this text directly from Solomon. There's insight that we need to read carefully a few times to get the inflection from the author. Go ahead, Bob.
I think that very first thing where it says, I said myself, come, I will test you. God has let us make our own mistakes along the way all the time. He lets us think we're finding pleasure. And then when we turn around and look back on what we've done, we find out it had no meaning in our lives, but we didn't look at it that way at the very beginning. So I think right there it tells you kind of what category. God lets us go as far as we can, before we fail. And we will.
Good. Good. Okay, let's get into this a little bit. Let's take those first 11 verses that we read. I'll give you a second to just kind of remind yourself of what that portion of the text was saying. And then pull out for me a couple of things that really jumped out to you, that really impacted you about Solomon's statements.
You say verse 11?
1 through 11.
Oh, are you ready?
Yeah,
Start to-
fire away. Yeah.
Okay. I find it actually quite interesting that I think 2 times in that piece, 11 verses, he still says his wisdom is with him, stood by him, or wisdom guides him as he's doing all these things. That's kind of, it's just, yeah, it's interesting. There's something to it.
My wisdom remained. Guided by my wisdom. Yeah. That's something to hold on to as we go through this. What else? Go ahead, Carmen.
He did not deny himself any type of worldly pleasure. He thought if he could find that worldly pleasure, he would be happy, everything would be great. But it actually ends up being meaningless because he needed, I don't know where it says it in Ecclesiastes, but he needs to focus on the Lord, on God, that's his purpose, not the earthly things. And I think that's what he's trying to let us know.
Did he say it wasn't any fun?
No, near the end, he says.
Say that again, Warren.
I said near the end when we get there. He said, I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart rejoiced in all.
Yeah. For my heart rejoiced in all my days, and this was my reward from all my labor. So as we're going through life, there's things that are enjoyable, absolutely enjoyable. I happen to love my job. It's not a real tough job. But I throw myself at it every single day, and I get a kick out of it. When I go home, I tell stories to my wife all night. She gets tired of hearing stories, but I enjoy what I do. The second I put my badge down on my boss's desk the last day and I walk out the door, somebody else will be in there doing that. I probably have a trained monkey doing what I do. AI. Same thing. Trained monkey. It doesn't, there's no permanence to it. It's here, we work at it, we put a lot of sweat and effort into it, and it is good to work. It is good to work. God gave us work to do, and it's good to do. There's nothing wrong with that. But as far as what? As far as permanence, as far as having something of lasting value, it's over that fast. I made myself gardens and orchards, and I planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made myself water pools. I mean, he's describing Oregon. Those of you who know I'm from Oregon. He's describing all the things that I would love to do and love to put effort into, like so many of us would. And then at the end he says, didn't find it in that. I looked on all the works that my hands had done. And that is something significant. Solomon is famous for a few things. He did quite a bit in his 40 years. There's a rather significant temple that we all are familiar with. I looked on all the works that my hands had done and all the labor in which I had toiled. And indeed, all was vanity and grasping for wind. There was no profit under the sun. Then I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly. What is folly? Go ahead.
For that,
Yep.
step back, one more thing that really interested me that I think is important. It's got to be important to think. The very first thing he says, it's all a test.
Yeah.
Now to what that means in the realm of testing, I know there could be some different versions, purposes, focuses, intents, all that there, but I think that's pretty interesting that I'm going to test this out. And I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but I think what the first thing that popped in my head was I think it's interesting as we live, as every person lives, you probably consider to some degree what he's contemplating. You're like, oh, if I was rich and I was famous, or I had this, or I had that, I could this, or I could that. And you contemplate the satisfaction behind it,
Mm-hmm.
and the overall value, kind of like what he's talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like, wow, like, he did it. Like, you try to think, like, oh, let me think that through in my mind. And, like, how could I do it? What would that, what would that, what would that? And you try to figure it out. It's like, well, I don't need to. He already did it. He did it and did it to the extreme. And I think that's kind of helpful to us. And then I guess that's why it's God's word, because it's helpful to us. But, you know, we don't have to try to figure that out on our own and live that out and extract. I know I'm stating the obvious, but it becomes more profound as it sinks into my brain
Right.
that we all do this, and we all wonder, and we itch at like, oh, can I this? And I think we do many versions of it too. Now I'll make this point and I'll shut up because there's like a lot going on in my brain, but I think we do miniature versions of it too. Like, oh, I want to get this, and I want the best of this because it's going to satisfy. Maybe it's a watch, maybe it's a car, maybe it's a new article of clothing. Who knows? It could be anything, right? Planting a fancy tree. I don't know. But I think we all do like some little version of that too. Not necessarily just to be physically satisfied, worship that feeling, because I hope we don't. But it all seems to be in that same realm, and pretty cool that he went to that extreme as a test
Yeah.
and laid it out for us.
Yeah.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah. His test was to prove out the value of whatever he was engaged in. And he went through that full cycle, as Daniel said, and completed it, and was able to evaluate the end result. I can't tell you what it's like to have an extra $1 million laying around, because I don't know if it brings peace of heart. I know because the scriptures tell me. But this is someone who walked through that. He had that. Saw some other hands. Done?
One of the sad things about, one of the negatives about a college education is you end up realizing how much you don't know. And there's so many interesting things that come up, but you don't have time to pursue that because you've got to do this to get your degree. And sometimes people think that you're going to come out of school thinking that you're a know-it-all, but if you're paying attention, you come out of school realizing there is so much I don't know.
Yes. And this is a great constraint, right? We only have so much time. So much time. Any others? Yes.
I can't speak for women, but I had read this somewhere other than the Bible. I noticed in my life from age, say, 20 to my age now, I read about men going through the rites of passage into adulthood and then later on an older age. So sometimes I try to look at it that way whenever I have a hard test, that kind of thing. Well, maybe this is a test from God for my faith and hope and charity.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Let's pick up in verse 12. And if you would, just scan through that, through verse 17. Wisdom, madness, and folly. What is madness and folly? Your hands up, go ahead and say it.
A lack of good sense.
Okay. What else?
Foolishness.
I'm sorry?
Foolishness.
Foolishness. Does it inherently define it as sin? Did Solomon go out and sin a bunch just to test this? What is he describing for us? I'm sorry?
The world?
Yeah. Go ahead, Mom.
I was just gonna say the worldly pleasures, but one thing I just picked up on, and it's kind of going back to the ones verses we just talked about, was that all of this stuff with Solomon didn't happen overnight. It
Right.
happened over time, and in verse 3, he was searching how to cheer his body and how to cheer his physical desires for worldly pleasure. And he was out looking for it, and it just kind of reminds me how we are always looking for something that's going to satisfy our worldly pleasures or make us happy, make us cheerful, and we get that, and then after a while, it's not doing that for us. We have to go out and look for something more. And that sounds like the progression that he went through in all of this.
Yeah. So the madness and the folly that Solomon is describing for us is an empty pursuit. It is, as he, from his perspective and his line of ability to reason, he was able to identify and categorize activities that would fall in here and activities that would fall here. This does not inherently define those things as sin, but they're just madness. They're just folly. They don't add any value to you and your relationship with God. They have no value in your development and existence in life. That is what madness and folly are. It's not necessarily sin. Solomon didn't go out and just say, well, I'm going to sin as much as I can and see if there's any value in it. That wasn't going to be blessed by God in any way, shape, or form. Madness and folly is things that we all do. I'll just tell you. I'm as guilty as the next guy. You pick up that phone and you do this, that is madness and folly. You do this on your TV, hour after hour, week after week, that is madness and folly. And I don't care what your sports team is. Is it sin? No, I'm not standing here proclaiming that. I'm telling you that our brother saw clearly, and he's helping us to see clearly that the simple little things that we chase and pursue and get sometimes caught up in emotionally to the point of obsession, it's madness. Put it down. Get your eyes up on the priorities. I saw some hands. Where did I see hands? Rhonda, did you have it up? Okay. All right, I thought I saw hands on that.
Well, I was going to say it's madness to have 700 wives.
Absolutely.
Just think about it. That's just not going to work out.
Absolutely. That's the kind of madness I never, ever, ever.
I'm sorry. I can't have that meeting.
How much time do we have? Is that clock right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Sorry, I'm looking for a verse.
18.
Verse 13, actually. Then I saw that wisdom excels folly as light excels darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceive the same event happens to all. And that's one of our themes that we put up on here, is that our time is limited. Death will call each and every one of us. And it does not matter what your title is, when that call comes, you will answer. There's no more remembrance of the wise man than of the fool forever. Go ahead.
What do you think's really behind that? And I saw that wisdom excels folly, this light excels darkness. So you got the comparison that they're starkly different, opposite ends of the spectrum, but never really says what is that wisdom defined? Or maybe he just doesn't say it yet. I haven't read through Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be honest. But you know what I mean? Like, he says that, and it's like, okay, to us, I think it's easy for me to pass that over. I think that's why it just stuck out to me. And I'm like, wait, let me go back and read that. Because why are you pointing this out? Why is God pointing this out? Why is it in here?
Right.
And it's like, well, wait, okay, it's easy to say, wisdom exceeds folly. Okay, no brainer, we get it. But what is that? What is he really saying that wisdom is?
This is a group class, sir.
I like, where's the answer?
Go ahead.
I don't know that I have the answer, but
Yeah, you do.
But a part of the answer has to do with Solomon's experience. We've been talking about time and progression. These things he didn't know when he was a young man. God gave him wisdom. And the more experience he had, the greater his wisdom grew. And one of the things he shares early on, even right here in chapter 2, is in verse 15, as I said in my heart, as it happens to the fool, it also happens to me. Then why was I then more wise? What was the function? What was the purpose of me gaining all this wisdom if the same thing that happens to the fool happens to the wise? And as with Scripture, most Scripture, there's what I refer to as a point of relativity. There's a lot that's written here in Ecclesiastes that newer in the faith, younger people, have a difficult time understanding. This was written by an old man. And there's a lot of experience and wisdom that comes from that the older that you get and you experience these things. Many things that you haven't experienced yet as a young person. But both the wise and the fool experience it all.
Yeah. In the realm of seeking permanence, seeking what man has always sought, immortality, forever. And we're looking for that in this vehicle. It is not to be found. And when I'm saying this vehicle, I'm touching my body. This body will not last. It wasn't designed to last. The things of this life were not designed to last. So, yes, the same physical outcome occurs no matter if you are wise or if you are foolish. However, thank goodness, Solomon says very plainly, wisdom, being wise in this life, excels folly like light over night. He's pointing us here. He's saying, hey, there's something of value here, but it doesn't give us this. It doesn't give us immortality. If your entire life is the pursuit of wisdom, know that you will still end up in the dirt.
And maybe that other piece is just as simple as what you just said. What's the definition of wisdom, right? So it usually has to do with application, if I understand it correctly. And if all the madness and folly isn't technically sin, and you're always doing the same things and nothing ever changes, your outcome is ultimately the same as death. So then using wisdom, just the application of all those things that he does, because I think of like what he said, like I built rivers, I built ponds, I did this, I did that. Maybe he did it all just focused on him. But if the application of all those things that he could do amazingly has a power and wealth and wisdom, the wisdom part would be maybe applying it outward. And because then you're doing it different, right? But it's all going to be the same thing. We all do the same thing all our lives. But how do you
So-
apply it? And
so
it makes
let's-
sense.
Let's keep reading. Solomon is not done. He has not given us one little snippet and then said that's the whole story. We've got 5 minutes left. Then I hated my labor that I had toiled under the sun. Therefore I turned my heart and despaired over all the labor that I toiled, because there's a wise man whose labor is wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and yet he must leave his heritage to a man who's not labored for it at all. For all his days are sorrowful, full of work and burdensome. His heart takes no rest. This also is vanity. Nothing, verse 24. Nothing is better for a man, we're talking about in this life, than he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw was from the hand of God. What do you do with that? We've got 3 minutes left. Somebody answer that for me. What do you do with that? Nothing better for a man to do. Eat and drink. Enjoy the labor of his hands. What is he calling us to in this chapter? Warren, thank you. You've got it.
We have examples of people who were very wealthy physically, and they shared that wealth. They did that in a way, they built up these things, and they didn't have what I would call selfish wealth, where you kept it all to yourself and wanted to do more. They shared it with others, and they shared it to spread the word of God. But Solomon's talking about, he built these things, he enjoyed them, but did he do it to satisfy himself, or did he do it to satisfy God, or to help others understand about God? I don't think he did. So I think that's what he's trying to compare.
Yeah. Agreed. Beans, as we're not going to finish the book of Ecclesiastes in this one 45-minute class. I'm gonna encourage you in a couple of things. Number one, please continue to read this book. If it's been a little while since you read the book of Ecclesiastes, read through it. There's times it's going to tear your heart apart, and you're going to throw down your hat and stomp it in the dust, because it is at times very, very frustrating at how empty life is. And sometimes you're going to shed a tear because of some of the pain of life. And other times you're going to pump your fist and you go, yes, there's purpose. So read through the book. This particular chapter, I chose because I'm pretty familiar with it and I wanted lots of conversation this morning. but it also drives home the single point that I'm inviting this congregation to join me in evaluating, there it was, priorities. Evaluating your priorities. I'm not sitting here in judgment of your priorities. I've got to look at my own. But the Book of Solomon encourages us to be very, very careful with what we allow ourselves to be engaged in. And He has called us to be wise. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up there. Next week, Kenny will be here, and I'm hoping he's going to kick us off on the book of Nahum, and then lead us into Habakkuk for the next couple of months, and then we'll start our summer program. Thank you so much for joining in with me this morning.
Thank you, Wyatt.
Thanks for the pens, Bob. No, I don't think so. Okay. No. Oh, yeah, I should have checked before. I know those things get dry back there. So.
Sometimes the kids come.
Yes. Yes. You can fold my stuff up and shove it out of the way.
I got to be still. It'd be even worse if I said what I wanted to say. I did the lesson.
That's what I tell my I'm like, as long as I can put there, maybe one day we're gonna be like, oh man, it's all going.